Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're going to unpack a super fascinating dynamic that honestly lives inside almost all of us. I'm talking about that weird gap between our good intentions and our actual actions. I mean, have you ever noticed a problem right in front of you, felt this massive surge of empathy, but then just froze? Well, today, we're looking at a story that perfectly captures this exact psychological tightrope. We're going to explore what happens when compassion literally collides with fear, and how we kind of use grand systemic thinking as this giant escape hatch to avoid getting our hands dirty in the present moment.
So, what is stopping you from doing the right thing? Just pause and ask yourself that for a second. Because, we all like to think that if a crisis hits, we'll just seamlessly step up and be the hero, right? But human psychology is incredibly complex. Sometimes the biggest barriers aren't physical at all, they're completely mental. We're going to examine a beautifully simple interaction from our source text that holds a mirror right up to this exact barrier. Okay, so our explainer today centers around this anecdote involving a young girl named Dimpy and her mother, who she calls Mama. And the story kicks off with a totally common, everyday tragedy. Dimpy spots a stray dog near their house. The dog is limping, and it's clearly been hurt. The text actually notes it looks like it might have been hit by a small vehicle. This right here is the inciting incident. It's that jarring moment where the world just drops a problem right at your feet and absolutely demands your attention. Now, Dimpy's initial reaction is pure, unfiltered empathy. She immediately says what she wants to do. She wants to clean its wounds, give it some food, and get it some water. But what's absolutely crucial to notice here is her second sentence. She says there are no animal rescue teams here. Dimpy totally hits the nail on the head. No official help is coming. The system is not going to save this animal. If this dog is going to get any help, it needs direct personal intervention. So the stage is perfectly set for action. And her mom just replies, "So do it. What is stopping you?"
Now, what's really interesting about this is how insanely fast the narrative shifts. That initial spark of compassion, it's lightning fast. But our brain's risk assessment is somehow even faster. You see, right between the desire to help and the actual act of helping lies this massive hurdle, and that is personal risk. The moment we realize that stepping in might actually cost us something, whether that's time, money, or in this specific case, physical safety, our empathy can just suddenly freeze up. And boom, there it is. Dimpy voices the exact barrier that's stopping her. She asks, "What if the dog bites me?" And look, this isn't some malicious thought. It is a very valid, incredibly tangible fear of the immediate situation. Injured animals are totally unpredictable. They're in pain, they're terrified, and they often lash out just to defend themselves. So Dimpy's survival instinct is basically going to war with her compassionate instinct. She desperately wants to help, but she really doesn't want to get hurt.
Mama's response to this is just brilliantly pragmatic. She doesn't sugarcoat it, and she doesn't offer any false comforts. She just says, "It might." She completely validates the risk. But then, she instantly offers the solution. "You take anti-rabies injections then." Mama is illustrating a really tough truth about compassion here. Doing the right thing isn't always safe. It's not always comfortable. Taking action carries real consequences. But there are mitigations and solutions if we're actually willing to accept the risk to help another living creature.
So, faced with the very real, very unglamorous prospect of a potential dog bite and, a series of incredibly painful rabies shots, Dimpy's mind does something absolutely fascinating. It pivots. When the immediate problem becomes just a little too risky to touch, we human beings have this amazing tendency to just zoom out. We shift our focus completely away from the messy, dangerous reality directly in front of us and escape into the clean, theoretical realm of the big picture. I like to call this the systemic escape route. In literally the blink of an eye, she completely abandons the bleeding dog in front of her to start questioning urban infrastructure. She asks, why don't they make safer roads? And hey, it's an incredibly noble question. You could easily argue it's a way more important long-term question, but in this specific, exact moment, it is a defense mechanism. Dimpy's avoiding the immediate crisis by intellectualizing it. She's basically trading the terrifying responsibility of today's problem for the nice, comfortable distance of tomorrow's plans. And this brilliantly illustrates what systemic change actually requires. Notice that Mama doesn't dismiss her daughter's question at all. Instead, she maps out exactly what it takes to get there. She runs through the paths. You could become a minister, an administrative officer, a judge, or join an NGO to build public support and change the rules. Finally, she suggests becoming a vet so you can help directly while pursuing those bigger changes. Dimpy enthusiastically agrees. She's going to be a vet and a policymaker, and she feels like she's completely solved the problem.
But let's be real for a second. Look at those steps. They take decades. They require an immense amount of dedication. This is where Mama playfully pulls Dimpy's leg, delivering that grounded reality check we all desperately need sometimes. She says, "But last month you wanted to become a farmer. But what about this dog now?" It just completely crushes their philosophical debate back down to reality. It exposes Dimpy's grand systemic plans for exactly what they are in this specific context, an avoidance tactic. Wanting to change the world in the future is a beautiful, amazing goal, but it absolutely cannot be used as an excuse to just step over the suffering that is literally right at your feet today. Finally, cornered by this totally sound logic, Dimpy admits the simple truth. I am scared. You do what is needed. She officially relinquishes the responsibility. And this leaves Mama to actually step outside and perform the physical work. This right here is the ultimate pivot from theory to practice. Mama isn't in there drafting legislation or running for office in this moment. She is quite literally getting her hands dirty.
There is such a stark contrast to pull out here. On one hand, we have Dimpy's grand plans, safer roads, policymaking, judicial appointments, going to veterinary school. These are massive, theoretical, huge societal shifts. But on the other hand, we have Mama's immediate action, an antiseptic, a boiled egg, some rice, and a simple bowl of water. These things are incredibly small, highly practical, and immediately available. Now, the grand plans might save thousands of dogs in 20 years, but those immediate small actions, they are the absolute only things that will save the whimpering dog today. Let's see how this builds into real-world impact. If we track the dog's recovery, on day 1, it gets treated, fed, and it sleeps. By day 3, just 3 days later, the dog is healed enough to gain its strength back and safely limp away. And honestly, the most beautiful coda to this whole story is that every single day afterward, that same dog returns to their gate for a lunch of boiled eggs and rice. One incredibly small act of courage and compassion created this massive, compounding, lasting impact on a life. And that brings us to the core takeaway of our explainer today. We can really define direct action, at least in this context, as choosing to address the immediate suffering in front of you, rather than just waiting around for perfect systemic solutions. Now, to be perfectly clear, Mama never once says systemic change isn't important. We absolutely, desperately need people fighting for safer roads and better policies. But the existence of a flawed system should never, ever become our own personal excuse to withhold basic, immediate kindness when we actually have the capacity to give it. So I really want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to carry with you. We are all Dimpy at times, right? We get paralyzed by fear and we're super quick to just blame the system. But we also all have the immense capacity to be Mama. So next time you see a problem right in front of you, will you plan a system or will you apply the antiseptic? It's a choice we literally have to make every single day. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.